Okay, let me ask you something directly. If I asked you right now why you pick up your phone, say, 50 times a day, what would you actually say? Because the answers, they just roll off the tongue, don't they? Oh, just checking messages, scanning the headlines, critical information, or maybe seeing a notification of friend's interesting update. We tell ourselves this constant, this digital reflex. It's all about connection, utility, staying informed. It's functional, we say. Necessary, even. It's just what modern life demands, right? We frame it like it's a responsible thing to do, keeping up with the world. But, well, that's the common story, isn't it? The accepted explanation. Maybe a bit too kind to ourselves. It sort of lets us off the hook for a behavior that, if we're honest, feels much more like, well, like an addiction, not just functional necessity. It feels compulsive sometimes.
And that very feeling, that compulsion, that's the tell. That's the crack on the facade.
Yeah.
Because when you really dig down, do a kind of forensic analysis on those specific micro moments, when your hand absolutely has to reach for the screen, when that digital craving just feels overwhelming, the reality that the sources point to is actually much more humbling, maybe even a bit darker. We're generally not picking up the device primarily to find out what's happening out there externally. We're picking it up often with, let's say, considerable and subconscious ruthlessness. We're picking it up to make sure we're in absolutely no immediate danger of finding out anything more about ourselves.
Wow, okay. That's a huge pivot. So you're saying the phone is less about communication and more like a kind of a psychic shield. So this deep dive then, it's about uncovering this profound, maybe humbling psychological reality, the cost of using distraction to actively block the insights our own minds are trying to give us.
Exactly. Precisely. Think about the timing. That reflex, it kicks in almost always when a very specific kind of anxiety starts pressing in. And not, the mild anxiety like, did I lock the door? No, this is the essential stuff. The difficult, sometimes existential anxiety. It's the kind of feeling where actually it's proper analysis, it's quiet interpretation. That's what the correct navigation of our entire life path depends on.
Okay, but wait. I have to push back just a tiny bit there. Surely there are genuinely necessary check-ins, like a work crisis pops up, a real family emergency, or just using the GPS to figure out where you're going. How do we tell the difference between genuine utility and this insight blocking you're describing?
That's a fair question. And it's the critical distinction, really. Utility is usually directed, it's purposeful. I need this specific address. I need to answer this urgent message. Avoidance, on the other hand, it's often unfocused. It's rapid. You just need to open the screen, click an app, scroll, until that background feeling goes away. The real clue is the internal context. When that hand reaches out, ask yourself, what difficult thought, what tricky cognitive work did I just interrupt? We seem to employ our machines specifically to halt that internal processing, the, let's say, functional use of the device in those moments of intense craving. It's to block insight. It's to, in a way, alienate our own minds from the most promising and, complex substrata.
Complex substrata. Okay, that sounds a bit academic. Can you break that down?
Right.
Put it into the language of, the mind itself. Like if my mind is this big complex factory, what job is the phone interrupting?
It's like turning off the internal alarm system just when it's signaling something important. Imagine your mind is, say, an office. And the CEO, that's your highest self, your core awareness, has scheduled a really crucial, maybe difficult meeting with the finance department, the relationship manager, the long-term career strategist. This is the meeting where you're supposed to grapple with the deep truths about where you're heading. But the moment that internal meeting starts, the second that difficult emotional stuff starts to surface, boom, we hit the eject button. We turn on this loud, flashing external noise machine, the phone, to drown it all out.
Got it. So the phone becomes the digital equivalent of pulling the fire alarm just to get out of that difficult conversation we really need to have with ourselves. And the thoughts we're trying to avoid, they aren't always like huge existential dread, right? Sometimes they're just specific nagging concerns, things that require real sustained effort to think through. Like maybe we reach for the feed instead of really wrestling with what it means when a partner says something unkind, something sharp, something that threatens to throw the whole relationship into question. That's a huge, overwhelming thing. It needs quiet, sustained cognitive effort, and the phone just wipes it away for a bit.
Or, it could be something much quieter, more insidious even. Maybe just talk to an old university friend, and they're genuinely excelling in a field you always dreamt of pursuing, and suddenly you have this difficult, pressing thought, I really need to make much, much better use of my own talents. Now, that thought, it's productive. But boy, it demands upheaval, change, effort. So much easier to just grab the phone, make sure that thought stays buried, unanalyzed.
Or thinking about family stuff. Maybe it's that strange, slightly unsettling thing a parent said over lunch. something that hints at a vulnerability or a dynamic shifting in the family, stuff you really, really don't want to confront right now. Every single one of these issues demands sustained, difficult attention. And sustained attention is precisely what the device is just so incredibly effective at shattering.
And this, right here, this is the dark, almost tragic irony of our age, isn't it? We invented this glorious, incredibly convenient machine, this powerful computer in our pocket, and yet in our moments of emotional vulnerability, we use it precisely to ensure we never really have to meet ourselves again. Never have to truly engage with the difficult questions that fundamentally dictate our happiness, our direction, and the kicker. We call this instrument of profound self-avoidance an instrument of communication. It often becomes, ironically, the royal road to the unexamined life.
Yeah, and we even take pride in the surface level efficiency it brings. We confuse consuming data with actual productivity. We pat ourselves on the back for the time we've supposedly saved. Look how fast I found that fact. Look, I didn't need to haul out a physical atlas. Oh, and look at these funny things I discovered that gave me a quick laugh. It feels like an achievement because, well, we measure achievement in speed and data consumed, don't we?
But what's really fascinating, and quite sobering, is what gets completely ignored in that quick calculation of efficiency. We ignore the profound sacrifice we're making by routinely throttling that essential, necessary anxiety, what philosophers and poets used to call, well, fruitful boredom. Fruitful boredom. That's the psychological space where, when you're deprived of constant external input, the mind finally starts doing its slow, complex, deeper work, restructuring information, synthesizing disparate ideas, generating novelty. It's when the internal CEO finally gets some uninterrupted thinking time. When you consistently crush the opportunity for that kind of boredom, you're essentially crushing creation. You're crushing deep thought.
That's a massive point.
Yeah.
Let's make this concrete. Let's talk about the tangible, real-world cost of losing that self-awareness. Because it's not just some fluffy philosophical idea, right? It translates directly into unrealized potential in our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it practically. Think about the daydreams we haven't allowed ourselves to entertain. And daydreams, they're often the raw material of new professional paths, new creative projects. Think of the quiet reveries we've instantly crushed the moment they started to surface, just because we preferred the easier, controlled feed of external information. Self-awareness doesn't just magically arrive fully formed. It has to be cultivated. It grows in those quiet moments of reflection that we are now actively, almost systematically, deleting from our daily lives. We are literally losing the self that could have been. Consider the new ideas we haven't hatched because we didn't give them space. The novel you were maybe supposed to write, or that business plan that relies on connecting three seemingly unrelated observations, connections you only make when you're truly bored and letting your mind wander deep. You refuse moment by moment to identify the fundamental, difficult feelings, the sadness, the anger, the frustration that would have actually motivated that massive, necessary career shift or that crucial relationship change. And so those potential changes, they just remain permanently on hold, stuck.
Wow. That's an extraordinary, really profound price to pay. All for the simple convenience of avoiding that slight, momentary discomfort of looking inward, the weight of that loss, the unrealized self, the unhatched ideas, the unmade changes. It feels enormous when you actually stop and look at it clearly. We are essentially trading our potential future for a brief, fleeting escape from our current internal state.
Exactly. And that feeling you just described, that sense of weight, that sense of loss, that's precisely the point. When you truly feel that settle in, you realize how urgent it becomes to try and break this cycle. But here's the hopeful part. This cycle doesn't have to be the end of the story. We can actually transform this pattern. We can propose something radical, something a bit unusual, a counteraction that focuses on transforming the craving itself. Instead of just fighting the urge, battling the impulse, we learn to use the urge as a signal. We act deliberately, precisely at the moment that phone craving feels highest, at the exact second you feel that desperate pull to flee your own mind.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, because the counteraction sounds simple, but I bet it requires serious willpower. You pause, you consciously keep the phone in your pocket or on the table, and you ask yourself a bold question. You turn that reflexive itch into a moment of intentional self-inquiry.
Yes, we need to replace the digital reflex with a mental one. When the urge strikes, when that screen feels absolutely indispensable, the single bold question you must train yourself to ask is this. If I wasn't allowed to consult my phone right now, what might I need to think about? The answer to that specific question in that specific moment, It can provide nothing less than a royal road straight into our unexamined lives. We transform the craving, that fierce desire to stop thinking, into an incredibly accurate compass, pointing directly towards where introspection is most critically, most urgently needed right now.
That completely flips the script, doesn't it? Instead of the phone being the tool to stop thinking, the craving for the phone becomes the trigger to start thinking about the important stuff, the difficult stuff. So, okay, what are those specific high value introspection questions we should be turning over in our minds when that impulse hits hardest?
We need to turn towards the questions that truly matter for our trajectory, the big ones. They might seem overwhelming at first, but remember, the source material suggests they are often already half-formed in our subconscious, just waiting for a bit of airtime.
Hmm.
So start big. Focus on overall direction. Ask yourself, what am I genuinely trying to do with the rest of my life? Seriously, what is the single most important project or goal that is currently stalled, and why?
And then maybe drill down into the more immediate priorities, the ones we often cloud with busy work and distraction, like asking, okay, what should I really concentrate on right now, maybe this week, that truly advances my core purpose, rather than just filling time or checking boxes?
And crucially, we absolutely must address those emotional and relational undercurrents, the things we try hardest to suppress with the endless scroll and notifications. We have to be brave enough to ask, what might I be profoundly sad about right now that I haven't fully acknowledged? And what is that sadness trying to tell me?
And confronting conflict too, right? Or things we're avoiding dealing with, asking, what might I be genuinely angry about? And who do I need to address this with? Or maybe, what do I need to forgive, either in someone else or myself?
And perhaps the most powerful question of all involves turning the focus directly inward. Asking with radical honesty, what crucial truth might I need to tell myself right now to halt this pattern of self-sabotage or avoidance? The answers to these huge questions, they aren't out there waiting to be found in some feed or article. They're already inside you. They're half imploring, half practically begging you not to download yet more noise, more distraction, just to drown them out again. Give them the quiet time. Let them surface. You know, the ultimate irony of this whole situation is really quite profound when you think about it. Our instruments of, let's face it, deliberate non-communication. These screens we use specifically to flee self-awareness, they can actually be transformed. They can become the greatest gateway to insight we possess if we learn how to use the impulse differently.
By studying the precise moments we most desperately want to flee to them, we turn the weapon of distraction into the trigger for necessary, vital contemplation. We use the compulsion itself as the map leading us back to our deepest, most important truths. So let's leave you with this final, maybe provocative thought. Something to mull over as you approach your next moment of idle waiting or that next reflexive reach for the pocket. Consider this, the severity of your craving for distraction in any given moment. It might be an almost perfectly accurate measure of the magnitude of the self-truth you are currently trying to avoid. Use the intensity of that craving. Use it as your new compass for self-exploration.